We're on episode 30, and today is the last day where I will be talking about London Film Festival and the last few films that I've seen there. Hey Matt Cal, how you doing? And I will also be talking about two of the general releases that I managed to see on Sunday, which is Bad Times at the Royale and the new Halloween film that obviously a lot of people are excited for. We've seen it a bit earlier than Halloween, which is next week, but I will let you know what I think of that. Everything spoiler free, as per usual. So let's just dive straight in because I don't have any news today. I kind of want to try and get it into the 1 hour thing that I used to do instead of like the 2 hour coverage that I've been doing through LFF. So let's see what we can do. The first one of the last few films that I've seen at London Film Festival, and sorry, I still have a bit of a cold, so bear with me on that, is Can You Forgive Me, which is Melissa McCarthy's new film. And it's created quite a bit of hoopla because it is a deviation from what Melissa McCarthy usually does, because she's known for being a comedic actress. She's very slapsticky, very comical, and I think probably best known for either having a really huge success of a film or having a ginormous failure of a film. And the last film that was in cinemas in general release was Happy Time Murders, which I think was 2 months ago, if I remember this correctly. I was talking about it here on ILoveCinema as well. I was not very, what's the word? I didn't like it very much. I didn't think it was abysmal, but it was sorely lacking. And this is coming from someone who doesn't have a problem watching like a puppet movie, because I like Meet the Feebles. Well, when I say I like Meet the Feebles, when I watched it like 15 years ago, you know, the thing that you do is like when Lord of the Rings came out and all of a sudden everyone was like, wow, Peter Jackson, who's that? And then you realize you've seen some of his films, but you've never seen Meet the Feebles, and then you really go on this quest to try and get a copy of Meet the Feebles. And then you finally get it and you watch it and you're like, what the fuck is that? That kind of a thing. So I like Meet the Feebles back then. I definitely, it's weird and bizarre and grotesque and fucked up pretty much. But I enjoyed it. You know, I was entertained in a weird way. So the entire film is basically puppets. Whereas Happy Time Murders is puppets put together with humans, which gives us a bit of a different gist. But overall, I just wanted to make the point of I don't have a problem with puppet movies. But unfortunately, Happy Time Murders just isn't a very, very good movie, which is very unfortunate because I like Melissa McCarthy. So this was the third to last film that was screening. So that was screening on, well, when I say third to last, I'm going by the press screening. So that was screening on Friday. Then we had another movie on Saturday and another one on Sunday. And Sunday was the end of the festival. So I was very excited for this one. This was going up against another movie that I wanted to see, and I can't even remember what it was. I think it's If Beale Street Could Talk. I decided on this one because I had heard really, really good stuff about Melissa McCarthy's performance, that it deviates quite a lot from what... Hey, Corey, how you doing? I'm just talking about Can You Forgive Me? Can You Ever Forgive Me, actually? Yes, Can You Ever Forgive Me? The new Melissa McCarthy film. I'm not sure what the release date is. Does it have a release date? It has UK distribution, but it doesn't actually say what the official release date is, and I haven't actually checked. I think it probably comes out sometime next year. This is a drama. This is not a comedy. You could say it's a dramedy because it obviously Melissa McCarthy is in this, so there will be some comical elements in this, which I quite liked. But it's more of a drama. The stuff that happens there is all the plot points and shenanigans that we usually associate with drama. But as with all the good dramas, yeah, I'm good. I still have a bit of a sore throat, Corey. How are you doing? So I'm going to be coughing quite a lot, so I apologize in advance. What's the latest with you? What's the latest movie you've seen? I'm going to be talking about Bad Times at the Royale and the new Halloween movie as well. So if you've seen that, stay tuned. even though I'm not going to be talking about it in like spoilers. I do not spoil anything that I talk about. At least I don't think I spoil it. So if there's anything that spoils anything for you, do let me know, because I try to do everything spoiler free. So can you ever forgive me, Melissa McCarthy, delving into the drama side of movies? Now, it says here, here's a quintessentially New York movie where city loneliness can be soothed by a kind face at a bookstore counter. It's the early 1990s, and Lee Israel, who's McCarthy, is a writer out of fashion. Her celebrity biographies aren't selling. She can't get over her ex-girlfriend. By the way, yeah, she also plays a gay character. No one knew about this, I think. And then all of a sudden in the film it was like, yeah, my ex. And it turns out it's a woman. And it's so wonderfully included in the film. It's a non-issue. And I was like, I love it. This is not what defines her as a character, but this is who she is. And I loved the way that it was handled in the film. So she can't get over her ex-girlfriend. She's been thrown out of every literary party in town for drunkenness. On top of it all, her cat is sick. Dark times call for desperate measures. Spurred on by roguish drinking buddy Jack, played by Richard E. Grant, he's brilliant in this as well, Israel turns to get a rich quick scheme that uses her research skills plus a little knack for impersonation. Next thing, she's selling some newly discovered correspondence from Noel Coward, amongst other literary giants. So she's basically faking literary letters by well-known writers, and that's how she makes money. And so she basically turns into a criminal. So she's a writer, she's got a crappy editing job or something like that, and she gets fired from that within like the first few minutes in the film. Oh, sorry, it's really bad today, because she's basically a horrible human being. She's horrible to everyone she works with. She feels quite entitled the way that she talks to other people. She's a nasty piece of work, and yet McCarthy manages to portray her in a way that is engaging and captivating, and that's not an easy thing to do, and she just does it really, really well. So we see this writer who's not necessarily very charismatic. She loses her job. She goes home, and you can tell that, you know, she hasn't paid her rent in like 3 months. She is as downtrodden as they come. And then other things happen or don't happen for her, and she brings her cat to the vet because something's wrong with the cat. The cat's not eating, and you know that that's not a good sign. And she basically can't have the cat see the vet because she has outstanding bills there, and they refuse to do anything for a cat if she doesn't at least settle half the bills. And that's one of the things that I had a bit of a problem with the film. Overall, I loved this movie because McCarthy gives a really powerful performance, really subtle and nuanced and natural and authentic, grounded. I really believed that she was Lee Israel, who I did not know anything about. So if this is not a proper portrayal of that person, I have no idea. But I just felt that this was really a writer who was up and coming, who was very successful at one point, and had just lost all of that and was downtrodden and the underdog. And this is obviously where we pick up the story, where we pick up her life and follow her. And this is what we as an audience want to see. We want to see the underdog, and we want to see them hopefully succeeding, getting better, and having a tiny bit of a success in their lives. And she is just absolutely mesmerizing in being such a almost deviously appalling yet captivating character, because a lot of the stuff that she does, she is a criminal. She is forging signatures, she is faking letters that she sells for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. She is selling forgeries. She is a criminal. But we kind of feel for her because she has no other way of making money. But then maybe if she was trying to be a bit nicer to people, she could keep a proper job, whatever it is, right? So there's like a couple of bits and bobs. But one of the things that really told me a lot about her as a character, but also kind of annoyed me about the film, was when she goes to the vet and she can't pay the bill, and therefore the vet can't have a look at her cat. And she clearly loves this cat more than anything in the world. And then the bill is like $82, so she has to settle half of it, which is $41. She empties her wallet and pockets and just everything, and she's got $14 on her, right? So it's like, fucking hell, that's all you've got. So she takes the cat back, and she's like, you can tell that was the last straw. That made her lose her shit, basically. And she was like, what am I going to do? And yet the next thing you see the character do is sit in a bar drinking overpriced alcohol with the money she doesn't have. And I'm just like, this is something that me personally, I cannot relate to. Because if I don't have money, then I will not spend it on something I don't have to spend it on. Like, she hasn't paid her rent in 3 months. And she's like, don't worry, I'll have it. And she knows, obviously, that the $14 are not going to make much of a dent in rent money. But I don't know. I have a hard time understanding why people then go and drink. First of all, I don't understand this whole why they then go and drink. And then people go, like, well, you've never really hit rock bottom. It's like, fair enough. Maybe I haven't. But I'm just too much of a practical and logical person to then just go and drink. Maybe I would just go and, I don't know, eat a lot of chocolate. Maybe it's because I'm not a drinker, but then Lee Israel is a drinker, so she goes for the drink. But I'm just like, it's just not practical to go to a bar and pay overpriced money for an overpriced drink when you can just go to the corner store and buy way more liquor for a lot less money to get the same effect, right? So I was just like, I can't relate to this. It just crushed you that you can't do anything for your stupid cat, and yet you go into the bar and then pay shitloads of money for a drink. And then you also pay shitloads of money to go to a diner and have breakfast there. And I'm just like, I just don't get it. You know, I just don't understand why people do that. But that's apparently what people do. And that's what she does. And that's where she meets, what's his name? Jack? Was it Jack? Yes, Jack. Played by Richard E. Grant, who I haven't seen in films in quite a long time. So it was quite nice to see him. He's fantastic. He's just such a scoundrel, you know. He's kind of like a gay Han Solo, sort of, you know. He's like this enigmatic, charming criminal that you know you can't resist, and you will have to strike up a conversation with him, and you know that he will have some kind of bad influence on you. So don't kill me because I just said he's like a Han Solo, but yeah, that was the first thing that came to mind. So those two together, obviously getting up to some shenanigans. And then her life gets a bit better when she starts selling all these forgeries, because she makes shitloads of money off that. But obviously she's taking money of people who might not necessarily have a lot. So she goes to, I think, her local bookstore, and there's like a cute girl behind the counter, and you think it's like they have a bit of a rapport going. And I was like, that's interesting. And then later on, obviously, you find out that she's gay. And I was like, oh, interesting. I didn't actually see that happening. But there's that little thing happening as well. So there's something going on between these two. And yet she is selling this woman forgeries for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And she's saying, it's like, the bookstore is not doing very well and blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, while McCarthy, or while the character of Lee Israel is quite engaging, and you root for her, you want her to get out of this problematic time that she's currently, this phase that she's currently going through. But on the other hand, certain things that she does and certain things that she says, but especially the things that she does, and to the people that she does it to, they're so devious that I was borderline thinking, can she actually come back from that? Is she redeemable? And I think that makes the movie quite interesting, because I'm pretty sure that some viewers might go, it's like, that's not, like, how can she redeem herself from that? That is going so fucking low. And that's also what makes it quite interesting. So overall, the film definitely lives off McCarthy's performance. And you don't have to be a fan of hers, because this is not a very comical McCarthy performance. So if you usually don't like her films because you don't like her slapsticky physical comedy stuff, this is not to be found here. There are certain funny bits in the film, so because it is a McCarthy film, so there will be certain comical things in there, but it's usually situational comedy because of what a nasty piece of work she is. She is so horrible to other people that you as the audience, it's funny for you, but it's not funny for the people in the movie. And that kind of creates the comedy for you as the audience. But some of the stuff that she says and some of the stuff that she does, you just like, I can't believe that she gets away with that she still has people that actually care for her, care about her, that they haven't just given up on her, because she's just such a nasty piece of work. But she has this usual McCarthy loudness and in-your-faceness. So if you've got a problem with that, the movie might potentially not work for you. Now, I think McCarthy is kind of perfect for this role because she is so unapologetically in your face with like the most ludicrous things sometimes. But she also says a lot of truth. And obviously, some of the stuff that she spouts, you can totally understand it because she is going through a hard time. So it is a drama, but I kind of want to call it a dramedy because there are a lot of very funny and also very entertaining bits in there. So overall, it's not a dreary thing. It is quite entertaining. And they've written here, Melissa McCarthy gives a powerhouse performance, the usual powerhouse performance, right? As audacious literary forger and caustic wit, Lee Israel in this darkly humorous biopic from director Royale Heller. And that's the other thing. It's like, this is directed by a woman, so you have to support it. Cheers. This is starring a woman. Cheers. And this is also starring a woman that we usually do not see as a leading lady because she's quite big. And this is unfortunate. Like, I don't have a problem with that, but unfortunately Hollywood does. And leading ladies usually do not look like Melissa McCarthy. And we have to congratulate her that she's been a leading lady for quite some time, despite not fitting the usual mold. And I love that about her, and I congratulate her on it. And now that she's actually broken through that comedic mold that she's always had into this drama, like, I don't think it's an Oscar-worthy performance, but it's a brilliant performance. It leads the entire film. It shoulders the entire film. Like, we have Richard E. Grant in there, but I'm not sure if he's the co-lead. I would say he's the co-star, but there's only one lead, and that is Melissa McCarthy, and she's fantastic. She is as real and authentic and gritty and horrendous. Surprisingly so, as I was surprised with Lady Gaga in A Star is Born, because I didn't expect so much subtlety and nuance from comedy powerhouse McCarthy, who's usually quite extreme and over the top and in your face. But for this character, it really works. And her drama chops are amazing. I want to see more of her. I want her to do more of that because she is really engaging in being a borderline unengaging, devious person, which I think is not an easy thing to do. So I was very, very surprised by that. I was happily surprised by that. So I highly recommend Can You Ever Forgive Me? Because it is entertaining from start to finish. Melissa McCarthy gives a great performance, but it's not even about Melissa McCarthy. You kind of forget that you're watching Melissa McCarthy because this is as un-Melissa McCarthy as it comes. And I was very, very surprised by that. And it's just a very well-crafted film. The script is very tight. There's no fat on the film. Everything flows really well. There's no pacing issues, really. Even the smaller, more somber, more slower scenes, they still work because of the characters that you've been introduced to. Because everyone has, like, their little niche. Do you say niche? Niche? We say niche, but I don't know. Americans might say niche. So everyone's carved out their tiny little space in the film, no matter how big the characters that they're playing. And everyone's a proper character, and everyone holds their own and holds this realistic, grounded space that it's just such a marvel to watch. It's just so beautiful. It's literally, you feel like you're not watching a movie. You feel like someone's just switched on a camera and is following this person around, and it's more like a documentarian style of thing. So I really love the performances. I love the entire idea, the entire setting. After I watched the film, I put it in my notes that I want to see I want to read the book that it's based on by Lee Israel, also called Can You Ever Forgive Me? I've not found it yet, but hopefully. So I think it's a great film if you're into characters, into character moments, if you like laughing at really dark stuff. Not as in like Schadenfreude, but more like you feel for this person, but you also can kind of understand like how ridiculous this shit is that this person has to go through. So thumbs up for Can You Ever Forgive Me? And I talked about this way too long. Excuse me. This is A Private War, which is a new film starring Rosamund Pike. Oh, it's probably under P for Private War, isn't it? Private War 15. And it's just too down. This would have been so much faster. This is a real killer of a movie because of what it's about, what it depicts. It's called A Private War, and it's kind of about war coverage, about media, about journalism. So given the time we currently live in, this is obviously very timely, and it can be quite shocking to watch. Not sure if I think that there should potentially be a trigger warning now or something, but some of the scenes that you get to see are brutal and are really horrendous. And it's not just the stuff that you see from the film itself, but it's also certain news coverage that was on TV at the time, because it does use archive footage as well. So potentially just be aware that there might be some very unsettling scenes that you might see. Just as long as you've got that in the back of your head. So we have, this is basically about, what's her name? Mary Colvin. Mary Colvin. The name didn't mean anything to me. She was a reporter or journalist for the Sunday Times, or the Times. I don't know if she only wrote for the Sunday Times. But in the film, she's a journalist for the Times / the Sunday Times. And she's a war journalist, basically. She goes into, well, high conflict areas, and she reports about what's actually going on behind enemy lines, behind what they usually let media see, because everything is biased, right? They usually don't show you the real stuff that actually is happening. The media is very propagandized. There's just certain things or certain angles of things that they want you to see, and she was not happy with that. She was like, I'm reporting what's actually going on. So she really goes into the nitty-gritty, and the entire film is structured in a way that it starts out with an event in Syria in 2012. Yeah, it was in 2012. So don't read up on this particular person, because there are potential spoilers in that. Now, if you already know about her and her life, I don't think that negates, I don't want to say the entertainment factor of the film, because this film is not entertaining. This film is a blow to the head and the gut and the heart, and just like, this is not an easy watch. But I think it's an important watch and powerful stuff to see, and I think it's one of the things that you need to see, because we sometimes, like, especially considering the climate we currently live in with the Syrian refugee crisis and stuff, and a lot of the other shit that's going on all across the planet, we need to remind ourselves what's actually going on. And so I think not just seeing the news and what the news actually allows you to see, but actually what was reported at the time. And this was only 6 years ago, and 6 years, it doesn't feel like very long, but it also feels like a lifetime. And to see this stuff again, some of which I had seen on the news, other things were totally new to me, and it really, really got to me. It's a very emotional watch, especially the second half. Some of the stuff you see there is just atrocious. But I think it is very important to see, and I think everyone needs to see this kind of stuff, because I haven't even told you what it's about yet, and I'm already going into telling you what I think. Okay, so Mary Colvin, like I said, she was a reporter for the Times, the Sunday Times, war reporter, war correspondent, and they already give away the spoiler in here, so I'm not going to talk about this. It says, sharp-minded Marie, in a bewitching performance by Rosamund Pike, and that is very true, had a fearless approach to capturing human stories in war zones. Widely recognized by the eye patch she insouciantly sported, sorry, I have no idea how to actually say this word, the result of a grenade attack during an interview with Tamil Tiger rebels, Marie was a striking figure in London culture circles in the 2000s, so in the noughties, right? as much at home with a martini at a party as she was confronting Muammar Gaddafi in an interview shortly before his death. That's also depicted in the film, and I was like, oh, it was her who interviewed him. I had no idea who. I remember he was interviewed, but I had no idea who the reporter was. Aided by resplendent visual cinematography. Now they're analyzing it. Oh, it's the cinematographer from The Hateful Eight, so I'm not surprised because it looks absolutely fantastic. This is all adapted from a Vanity Fair article called Mary Colvin's Private War. It's just devastating and heart-wrenching and brilliant what they show us there of Mary Colvin, because she was a powerful person, and the way that Rosamund Pike portrays her, it's like, obviously I don't know anything about the real Mary Colvin, so this could just be one interpretation. She could have actually been like that, I'm not entirely sure, but she was someone who had to report on these things. It was like she had no other choice. It was so deep inside her that she was like, there's injustice going on in the world and no one gives a shit. And I need to I can't do anything about it, but I at least need to let the world know that it's going on. And I think this is the first step in making everyone aware of all the shit that's happening. It's like when like I was saying, the narrative is structured so everyone is culminating into this event that happened in Syria in 2012. That's how the film opens, with a voiceover from Mary Colvin. And then we kind of go back in time and we start in the 80s, and then we go forwards into the noughties where most of the stuff from the film happens. And then, excuse me, every time we start a new event that the film depicts, it's like 4 years until, I can't remember what the place was called in Syria, which is the ultimate thing that happens in the film. So it's clearly counting down to that, or towards that. And you know, like, you don't need to be a genius to figure out what's going to happen there, right? So it's just interesting to see, like, these bullet points. Like, it's basically a biopic, and what biopics usually do is, like, they have these bullet points of events that they feel they need to incorporate, because otherwise they're not going to do the person justice. And I think they did it quite well, because while I do not like the word entertaining associated with a film like that, because it sounds so wrong to find something like that entertaining, but the film and the script work really well. There's a proper flow to it. There's no real pacing issues there. There's no fat that I would trim, and the film, I think, runs over 2 hours. Oh no, it's actually 106 minutes, so it's not even that long. And we also have Jamie Dornan in here and Stanley Tucci. And Stanley Tucci in a very small role, but Jamie Dornan basically plays the photographer that goes with Mary Colvin on most of her assignments. Just by pure chance they meet, and she's like, let's go. She's a very, can-do kind of person. She thinks outside the box. She doesn't like rules. She breaks them. She's like, I need to get there. I will get there. She risks her lives and limbs and health and just everything constantly to report on what is actually going on. And she interviewed a lot of world leaders or a lot of rebel leaders. She interviewed people that you usually do not get to interview. She was an amazingly unstoppable force of a woman. And I think this movie does her justice. Not that I personally know her, but it paints a really impressive picture of this war correspondent and war journalist. And I think Rosamund Pike does a really good job. I loved her portrayal. I had heard that some people thought she was too pretty, or it was too obvious that it's Rosamund Pike playing her. While obviously I know that it's Rosamund Pike I'm looking at, I never felt like I was looking at an actor portraying a character. I always felt that I was looking at Mary Colvin doing her thing, and I thought that's why the movie eventually works. It's all on her shoulders. You could say that Jamie Dornan is kind of like the co-lead, but it's all like Melissa McCarthy's film is all about her. A Private War is all about Mary Colvin, played by Rosamund Pike. And I think she does it phenomenally. I believed everything that she did in the film. I never was taken out of it because I thought something was unbelievable or unrealistic or over the top or whatever it was. I really thought it was a very powerful yet subtle and quite like really nuanced performance. It's like it was just like, yeah, I'm just doing it. It's like I'm being this person, you know. There's nothing to write home about. So unassuming, kind of like she was. It's not about me, it's about the story that I'm telling you. And it's kind of like in this film as well. It's not about her, and it's not about Rosamund Pike giving a brilliant performance. It's about the story the film is trying to tell you. And that's one of the things that really annoyed me after I watched the film, because you could hear a pin drop after the credits started rolling. It was like, there's some really heavy shit happening in this. And I went to the bathroom afterwards, and I overheard some of the other female critics in there going, I really don't need to see that. That's all I remember them saying. It's like, I really don't need to see that. And I wanted to scream at them. It's like, that's exactly why you need to have seen that. You ignorant, stupid cow. I don't need to see that. It's like the same person's like, I don't need to see the homeless on the street. I don't need to see all the shit that's going on in the world. I don't need to see that. I want to live in my little golden cage, in my little bubble where no bad things happen. And I was like, that's exactly why movies like this need to be made over and over and over again. Because we have so many ignorant people who prefer to live in their ignorance. And it made me so angry. I really just wanted to get out there and bitch slap her. It was so bad. And it was the exact opposite of who Mary Colvin was, because she cared. She cared so much that she repeatedly risked her health and her safety and her life to report what's actually going on, because too many people are turning a blind eye, which is kind of funny when it goes like blind eye. And just don't want, they don't want to know. And she's like, if I write about it, if I present you with the images right in your Saturday, Sunday morning paper, there's less of a chance that you're not going to look. Because you're not going to go over there and take a look for yourself. Maybe you can't go over there and take a look for yourself, but I can look for you, and I can report back to you of the shit that I've seen. And this is why stuff like this is really important. It sounds bad, but I love the film because it is so unsettling and unnerving. And it's not the kind, like the press screenings are at like 8:30, 9 in the morning. So watching films like that shortly after you had breakfast, if you had breakfast, is not the best way to obviously view a film like that. But it was so powerful, and I felt like someone punched me in the gut. But on the other hand, I also felt really uplifted that there was such a great woman that went out there and did all that shit. You know, if I only do half of what she's done, it would make one hell of a difference. So she's very inspiring, and I think the film is very inspiring. Of course, there's a lot of atrocities happening in the film, and for a good reason. It's not graphic or extreme or over the top in a gratuitous manner. It's just showing you what this shit looks like. And it's horrible. But I love that there was someone like her who was reporting on it, and it was brilliant. And I think Rosamund Pike is brilliant, even Jamie Dornan is brilliant. Like, everyone in this film is great. And I believed that they were playing the roles that they were playing. Everything was very grounded and realistic. Like I said, I believed everything. Like, this could have been a documentary, and they used archive footage for all I know. It was so believable, it was so powerful, it was so amazing. And I really need to get going. So, I think, based on a true story, A Private War, Rosamund Pike, if you can stomach it, because it's not easy to stomach. It's not a horror movie, but maybe it is, because all the shit that you see there actually happened. All the shit that you see there has not been... It's not extreme, this is realistic, and it's horrendous. Some people blend that out and they're like, I'm just watching a movie. But if you really let it hit you, I think if it just makes us rethink our stance and how we feel about what's going on in the world, maybe we can make a difference. Maybe this film will make a difference. Just like Mary Corbin made a difference, it would be great. I thought it was great. Absolutely fantastic. Oh, you can hardly see this, sorry. It's because it's so dark. Does this help? No. Does this help? No, you can't read it. Okay, it's saying Stan and Ollie, which is a film about Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy, the comedians in, that was after the Second World War. Hang on, wasn't that the start of it? I'm trying to be clever and not use the index, but it's probably not going to go very well. Oh no, actually it did. Okay, cool. Stan and Ollie, starring Steve Coogan and John C. Reilly. So Steve Coogan is playing Stan and John C. Reilly is playing Ollie. And I don't know much about Stan and Ollie other than they existed. They were huge. They were comical. I've never really watched much of their stuff, if I remember. Maybe when I was a little kid, but I don't really remember much of it. And I'm not sure if it would work nowadays, because some of it is so over the top and slapsticky that I'm not sure that's going to work nowadays. But this movie is absolutely phenomenal in showing you who these people were, what made them tick, what they had to go through, and also showcasing them at different points in their life without actually jumping through time, through different time zones in their lives, which I thought was really good, because they had this huge career in film. Unfortunately, because that the way their contract was structured, they didn't make a lot of money off these films. So afterwards, when their career kind of deteriorated a bit, they were kind of borderline broke. So they were really trying to get the career going again after a couple of years, because they had a bit of a bad breakup, a bit of a split. And then they tried to come back together again after a while. And then they end up touring Britain because they might potentially shoot a movie here. And that's the movie. That's the film that we're watching. Seeing them coming back together, touring through Britain, and what happens during that. And while all of this happens, there are sort of kind of like some sort of flashbacks to stuff that they've done previously while we're watching excerpts from some of their films, which I think is really well done. And Coogan and Reilly, is it Reilly or O'Reilly? C. Reilly, sorry. Okay. So Coogan and Reilly basically reenacted some of the most famous scenes from these films. And while I can't remember them properly, what the film does, once the credits roll, they show you the real stuff from the Stan and Ollie movies, and you can see the real Stan and Ollie do the things that you've seen Coogan and Reilly do throughout the film. And it blew my mind. It was so uncanny how meticulous they recreated these scenes, like every tiny tilt of a finger or a tip of a hat here, and it's insane how diligent they were in recreating these scenes. It's absolutely phenomenal. So what's the film actually about? In 1953, several years after their last film, and with their immense celebrity on the wane, Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy embark on a gig tour of British seaside towns and music halls. Surprised by the modesty of the bookings and cramped little guest houses, the tour starts out subdued. They struggle for audiences, and their booking agent seems disinterested. The booking agent is brilliant. But a series of TV guest spots and celebrity appearances soon rekindle the country's interest in their genius, and the buzz grows as they head towards a big London finale. As the attention builds, so too do old resentments, coming to a head as they're joined by the wives, Lucille and Ida, played brilliantly, absolutely phenomenally brilliantly by Shirley Henderson and Nina Arianda. They are so amazing. They should have a movie on their own, and I'm not exaggerating. So they're joined by the wives. Coogan and Reilly fans know they're brilliant. Oh no, that was it. Okay. So Coogan and Reilly together are brilliant as Stan and Ollie. I thoroughly believed that I was watching Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy doing their thing. And I was like, every time I say Hardy, I'm thinking Tom Hardy is really bad. Laurel and Hardy, I thought they were so fantastic. And even like all the mannerisms and stuff, especially Coogan as Laurel, it was like, it blew my mind. Especially like, I was like, I know exactly who you're playing. Hey mate, how you doing? I'm just talking about Stan and Ollie, the film with John C. Reilly and Steve Coogan. That was the closing night gala at the London Film Festival on Sunday. And there was an embargo on this as well, so before you had to walk in, before you got to walk into the cinema, you had to like sign an NDA and stuff. But I thought they were absolutely magnificent. I immediately believed that they were who they were. I didn't just know that, oh yeah, he roughly looks like this person and he roughly looks like that guy. They looked so uncanny like those two guys. And then some of the routines they did, like obviously I didn't know how brilliantly meticulous and detailed they were. But then when you see kind of like the outtakes, the over credit stuff where you usually see the bloopers, you see the actual footage and you're just like, fucking hell. They did this so amazingly. And they are very engaging, very, very charming and captivating, even when they're not doing their like Laurel and Hardy shtick. They are interesting characters. They are characters with their own problems, with their own insecurities, things that they have to overcome. You learn, like it said, it's like with the resentments and stuff, why did they break up if they had such a great career going? There was like contractual problems and stuff. And then sometimes something just happens. And one person makes a decision that they think is not that important, and yet forever it will spiral their life out of control and maybe someone else's life out of control. And yeah, sometimes you don't know how important this tiny little decision is. I mean, we make decisions 100,000 times a day, you know? Do I say something now or do I wait a second and say something now? That's a decision. You know, we make so many decisions and most of them are just seemingly inconsequential, and some are just so important and we don't know which ones are the important ones. And I love this film because of how funny it is, but also how dramatic and tragic it is, because while they are a comedy duo, they are basically very tragic figures, the stuff that happened to them and how they were kind of taken advantage of. Which is why their contracts weren't very good, which is why they didn't end up making a lot of money off the films that they made. There's a point in the film where they're saying, it's like, oh, everyone loves our movies and they're running over and over and over again in cinemas. And yeah, we're not seeing a single dime for that because we're not being paid for any reruns. It's like, nowadays that would be unthinkable. You know, residuals and stuff. It's like, yep, they didn't get that. But what is so great about this film is like, you don't need to be a fan of Stan and Ollie, because it's not necessarily about them as the comedy duo that everyone knows. It's about them as real people, the people behind the scenes. And you see a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And just like in Can You Ever Forgive Me, a lot of the comedy for the audience, a lot of the laughs for the audience come from very dramatic or tragic things that happen, or situational comedy that for the character themselves is not funny, but for you as the audience it's like, wow. So it is kind of a bit dark, but not as dark as Can You Ever Forgive Me. So it's a very entertaining film, but there's also some really heavy stuff that happens in there. There were a few moments in there where I cried as well. So it definitely goes down into that kind of dramatic level. So I wouldn't necessarily class it as a comedy. I'm not sure if they have classed it as a comedy. It doesn't actually say. It's also a very short film. It only runs 97 minutes. And I think that is a really good running time for it, because I felt like it was a 2-hour film. I didn't feel bored by it because the characters are that charming and engaging no matter what they do, that you're always with it. And even the side characters, even like a person that has like 1 or 2 lines, they're really good at giving their 1 or 2 lines. Like all the characters were interesting, entertaining, or just by the way that they say something or give a look to someone. It's so much fun for the audience to watch this film. I was so surprised by that. It's not as laugh out loud funny as The Favorite was, which I would definitely class as a comedy. But this one is entertaining and funny, but also very much grounded in reality and a biopic. So always keep that in mind. So in a biopic, there are certain events and characters that have to be included in there. But the film definitely knows that it's depicting the biopic of a comedy duo, so people will be expecting a lot of laughs. And I think that's why maybe some characters are a bit caricatured. I'm usually not a fan of that, but I have to admit that the guy who plays the manager of the tour, and I can't remember, was that Danny Houston? He was absolutely fantastic in this. Basically, the guy, the actor who plays the manager of Stan and Laurel while they're doing the tour in Britain, he is this typical touring manager, this typical manager who's only interested in money. And so he's only interested in bums and seats. So pretty much everything that he says, all his mannerisms, all his facial, what's the word? All his, everything he does with his face, everything he says with his dialogue, with his body language, it doesn't matter. You know, this guy is money from head to toe and back. That's all he cares about. And the guy plays it so brilliantly that he is basically the comic relief. Aside from the wives, who are, I would say, kind of stealing the film from Coogan and Riley. I mean, Henderson and what's it, Arianda. I don't think I've seen her in anything before. At least I didn't register that. But those two together, they're kind of like their own Stan and Ollie thing, because these two women clearly do not like each other. And they're stuck with each other because their husbands work with each other. And so they have to spend a lot of time together. And that's the only reason why they even know each other, why they socialize every now and then. They clearly have utter disdain for each other. And that makes the scenes with the two of them pure gold. Absolute pure gold. It is so fantastic. Just the first time you see them together, they set the tone immediately, and you know that this is going to be amazing. And there's just more from that onwards. Like every time those two are in a room together, in a scene together, you know it's going to be bonkers. And it is. So just those two, they need to kind of like get their own movie. They stole every single scene that they were in. Their performances, the dialogue, it was so witty and sharp. It was like, pew, pew, pew. It was fantastic. And then on top of that, the manager, every time that he was in there, it basically elicited a laugh out loud moment by the audience. So it was quite entertaining. It was interesting that it wasn't Stan and Ollie that were eliciting the most laughs. It was the wives and the manager. And it just made it all work. So they could be their downtrodden, almost tragic little selves, while their supporting players were bringing in the entertainment and the laughs, but also kind of the heart. But Coogan and Riley really bring a lot of heart and soul to this film, and I really loved it, even though I thought it was like, I'm not even sure if I want to see this film, like, do I really care about Stan and Ollie? And then I watched it and I was like, that was epic, that was brilliant. So Stan and Ollie also get 2 thumbs up. Alright, now I quickly want to talk about the my favorite few films from London Film Festival. I just want to give a quick overview in excuse me, in no particular order, other than the favorite is among my favorites. I think that and Destroyer were probably, and Wild Rose, those 3 are my absolute favorites. The favorite stars Olivia Colman, Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz. It's a depiction of, I think, 19th century Queen Anne in England. And it is, I didn't know, it's a comedy. This is so hilarious. This is laugh out loud funny. Every few minutes there's a laugh out loud moment. It's just absolutely fantastic. I was so surprised by that. And it's nasty as well. It's like the people are saying what they're thinking because you're like in the upper echelons of society, because you're in the palace, right? And there's stuff they say to each other because they know they can get away with it. And then also, like, sometimes they don't. And there's so much subtext, like Latin rich subtext that's going on in this film at all times, while they also say horrendous shit to each other. And it's basically Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone vying for the attention of the Queen Anne, who's played by Olivia Colman. And they're all fantastic. I mean, Emma Stone's an Oscar winner, Rachel Weisz is an Oscar winner. I'm pretty sure Olivia Colman is going to be nominated for an Oscar for this film. The performances in this are out of this world. It is absolutely brilliant. This is kind of like the whole nasty women thing. It's like women really going to all kinds of lengths to get to where they want to go. Nothing is off limits. That's kind of what this film is. You kind of feel a bit sorry for the men in the film because it's like, holy crap, women unleashed. It's just horrible and beautiful at the same time to behold. And I absolutely love this because just this film is pretty much perfect. The script is really tight. The dialogue is sharp, like really fucking sharp, like guillotine sharp. It really cuts. And it's witty, and it's the whole film is entertaining. The performances are fantastic. The cinematography looks great. The costumes are awesome. I still can't believe I didn't get to talk to the costume designer. I think it was Sandy Powell. She's already won Oscars for other stuff. She's fantastic. Like the entire film, I think this is one of the most perfect films that I have ever seen because I can't really think of anything that I would change. Anything that I would say is like, maybe you want to get rid of this or enhance this, or I can't think of anything. And that's really rare because I usually go like, oh, maybe you should have cut that scene or done this or done that. This one, I have no notes other than I thoroughly enjoyed this from start to end. I can't wait for this to come out on video on demand or Blu-ray or whatever it is, because this is one of my, I think this is going into my all-time favorite film list. And this is definitely on my favorite film list for this year, even though I think it comes out in January, so I'm not sure if I'm going to include it now, but we'll see what the Oscars do. Comes out, as far as I know, in January. Check this out. This is one of the best films that you can watch. This is the absolute highlight of London Film Festival for me. Absolutely loved it through and through. This is Destroyer, which stars Nicole Kidman. And then a bunch of other people, but basically it's just a Nicole Kidman film. And it's the most powerful thing that I've ever seen. I mean, she's done really good work previously. She's played really powerful and problematic people before, challenging roles. That's the word I was looking for. She's a really good actor, and we know that she's good. But this is kind of like putting on another level. You know, she's like, I've never seen her like this before. She's really going down and dirty and realistic and grounded and gritty and just really going for it. And then the film itself, other than her performance, which is phenomenal, the film itself, the narrative structure is interesting. There are things happening there where I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was happening. Now I get it. And that puts the film in a different perspective, which is why I think you kind of need to watch it twice, or at least I want to watch it a second time. So I can't wait for this to come out. I think it has a release date for next year as well. I can't wait to see this again. After I watched this, I was like, this is like my favorite film of the entire festival. This was 2 days before I watched The Favorite, I think. And it just floored me. It's so good. And all the actors in this are good. But it's Nicole Kidman that just, she will slay you. With the character is just, you're not entirely sure what you're watching. It's just mesmerizing and a train wreck, I can't look away kind of a thing. You know it's not going to end well. You know you're going to look at carnage, but you still need to fucking watch. And she's just that captivating. And as you can see, hopefully, she doesn't look very glamorous and stuff, which is why I was like, she's going down nitty gritty, you know. It works. You know, she's still the captivating Nicole Kidman underneath it all, because the eyes, you know, they don't change the eyes. And it just works. And I love this film. Destroyer. Put that on your list, just like The Favorite. Absolute top. And this is Wild Rose. This is the third one of my absolute favorites from London Film Festival. There were a lot of really great films, so don't get me wrong. But these three, I think, are my absolute top three. Even Can You Ever Forgive Me is not going to get in there. Even Private War is not going to get in there. Wild Rose stars Jessie Buckley. If you don't know who that is, IMDb her, Google her. She's going to be huge in a few years. She's already huge. Like, people know who she is, but she's going to be fucking huge. She was in Beast earlier this year, which was kind of like a surprise little indie hit. And she floored me in that. And I put her on my list of people that I just need to see every single project that they make. Every single film they bring out, every TV show they're in, I'm going to watch it. because she's phenomenal. And then she starred in Wild Rose, and I was like, it's about a country singer, and I don't give a shit about country music. I do now. You know, the music, the music they were using throughout the film, it's country music. I don't like country music, and yet I was really going for it. Whatever music they chose, whatever branch of country music that falls under is really good. It was really entertaining. I was really bobbing with it. And I was like, yeah, I really get it. I get why she's into this. It was a lot of fun. But the film is also quite tragic because the person she plays, Rosalind, she comes out of prison for... She didn't do serious crime, let's just put it that way. She comes out of prison, and then her whole life is kind of like upended. She's got 2 children, and she can't go back to her job singing at some kind of bar where they play country music, and that was her whole life. And she can't do that because she's got an ankle bracelet, because she's just been released out of prison. She's on parole. She can't leave her house between 7 p.m. and 7 in the morning, which is obviously exactly when she would be working in the bar, right? So that kind of like throws a spanner in the works, and she's constantly going on about how she wants to go to Nashville and wants to be like a huge music star, country music star. And that's all I'm going to say, other than Jessie Buckley is fantastic. All the cast is great. The kids are great. Her mother is great. She meets she takes a job as a cleaning lady, and the person she works for is kind of like the fairy godmother and sort of like helping her with what she's going through and potentially achieving her dreams. And it's just a really engaging story. It's kind of like A Star is Born, but not the Gaga version. This is like the British version. I think I wrote on Twitter, the US gave us Cooper's A Star is Born, and Britain, the UK, raced with Jessie Buckley's Wild Rose. And I have to admit, it's like, as much as I like Lady Gaga in A Star is Born, but Wild Rose is a much better film, a much better underdog film, a much better music film, and very, very different, but also very, very same. It's quite interesting that while I was watching it, I could not see, it's like I could not see the similarities between the two films, and I thought Wild Rose did it better, which is probably, while the film doesn't come out until, is it March? It's not January. It comes out in a few months, and I think it's because it doesn't want to have its release too close to A Star is Born, which is obviously a huge hit because you've got Lady Gaga starring in it. Definitely put this on your list. Wild Rose, starring Jessie Buckley. Make sure you go and watch it, and you can thank me later. So The Favourite, Destroyer, and Wild Rose were my 3 favorites from London Film Festival. I'm quickly going to run through some of the other ones I liked. The Old Man and the Gun, potentially Robert Redford's last movie. Absolutely phenomenal. Great performances from the entire cast, but especially Robert Redford. It's a very entertaining film. I was very surprised. I didn't initially want to go and see it. I've reviewed it on the previous ILoveCinema, I think. Just check it out on YouTube. And I think it was on the previous one, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I love this film. I was very surprised how entertaining it was from start to finish. It's very charming. And yeah, just go and watch it. Old Man and the Gun. I think it's going for a general release fairly shortly here in the UK, so put that on your list. Not just because it's Robert Redford's potential last film. Colette is a film starring Keira Knightley about the French novel sensation in the 20th century. Was it 20? Yeah, start of 20th century. Keira Knightley is fantastic in this. This is also obviously tick the box of LGBT. She was an LGBT person. The depiction of LGBT is quite alright in this. I thought it was quite good. There's sort of like a borderline transgender thing in there. I don't know too much about transgender. I'm not transgender, so I don't really want to talk too much about that because I feel like it's out of place for me to talk about that. I thought the depiction of everything that's in the movie in regards to LGBT was done well, as far as I can tell. I really liked the film. I thought she did a really good job. It's also one of the whole fuck the patriarchy kind of films, which obviously is also something that I'm quite into. So I enjoyed it from that point of view. And it is, again, like a lot of the other films, surprisingly entertaining from start to finish. Even though this one has a bit of pacing issues in the middle, in the second act. But because by that point at least, I was really enamored by Colette and what she was going through, and I was like, when is she finally going to break out of the shackles that her husband put on her and just, go for it? And it was quite interesting to see. One of the downsides is that after I watched the film, I wanted a sequel, because a lot of the stuff that I expected to be in the film was actually not in the film and was on cue cards at the end. So that was a bit of a disappointment. But the film itself I thought was really well done. I thought Keira Knightley did a really good job. Everyone in the film I thought did a really good job. It's a period piece, which is usually not something that I really get into. It's not my favorite genre. There was a lot of period pieces at London Film Festival. This one I thought was a well done film, very entertaining from start to finish, and you should definitely check it out, especially if you're into female leads, because this is while there is a male co-lead in her husband, but this is a female-led film, just like Mrs. McCarthy's is a female-led film, like Favorite is a female-led film, and there were a lot of female-led films which I really, really loved. There were a lot of films that I unfortunately didn't manage to get to see, but I think it was a really good representation, even though I think it was only, there was a panel I went to and I think they said there was like 38% of women directors. I might be making this up, I'm not sure. But there was a lot of female-led films for me, because personally, of course, I'm an actor, so if there's a female-led film, for me that is really important. If it's directed by a female director, that's even better. So this one, definitely check it out. I really, really enjoyed that one. This is Life Itself, which reviewed abysmally. I know it's after 9, so I'm running over, but it's not going to be a 2-hour show, so we're probably going for like 80-90 minutes. Also depending on my voice. Life Itself reviewed really badly in North America. I think it's screened at the Toronto Film Festival, if I'm not mistaken. Critics shredded it to pieces really, really badly. So I watched it, and as I was sitting there, I was like, hang on a minute, this is from the guy who does This Is Us, which is a TV show in America that I'm a huge fan of. And Dan Fogelman is the guy, I think he's like the showrunner or something, and he's the director for this one. And I think he also wrote the script. So it's very melodramatic, because that's what the TV show is like. And a lot of the stuff that happens in the film is quite coincidental, and you're like, this makes no sense, blah, blah, blah. All of this is a bit contrived and only happens because the script says so. And I'm usually someone who has a lot of problems with those kinds of things, because it doesn't feel very realistic. But in this, it just works, because it's trying to bring a certain point across. And the narrative, the storytelling is quite predictable. But I didn't have a problem with that, because I found the characters engaging, and I found what the movie was trying to tell me quite engaging. But then maybe I'm just a sap. I really liked the film. I don't understand why people are tearing it a new one. I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel or anything, but it's a solid film. It's a tearjerker. There was not a dry eye in the cinema when I walked out. I think I was a fucking mess. I cried so much throughout this film. It's like watching This Is Us. I cried so much, it's ridiculous. So for that, it worked, because if a film gets me emotionally, then I am engaged, and that's exactly what this film did. So I really liked it. And I think people should just check it out. If you don't like melodrama, and if you don't like overly stylized events and characters, maybe it's not for you. But just for the first 30 minutes, I think you should watch it. And you know exactly when the cutoff is. But but even the start, like the first 30 minutes are quite quirky and different, and I was like, wait, I thought this was like really dramatic, and it's quite funny in the first 10 minutes, and I was like, what's going on here? And then it changes, And then that change obviously makes some sense. And I was like, that's really quirky, that opener that you're going for. And I was already hooked. And then it kind of deteriorates from that because it doesn't go the full-on bonkers way, unfortunately. But by that time, it had me hooked. And I was paying attention and I wanted to see it through. And yes, there are bits in there that I was like, can we just get over this? And can we just cut this out? So this one, definitely, there are bits in there where I was like, I would cut this scene down and I would cut this and this and this. It's a bit too long, but overall, I was emotionally invested in it. Even though it was so predictable, you know exactly what's going to happen. And yet, I think it works. Like, it's a testament to people's performances that I am invested. And I was. And that's all I can say to that. So maybe you watch it, you're not invested, the performances didn't work for you. Fair enough. But I thought, for me, it worked. I don't understand why critics were shredding it to pieces. I mean, from a technical point of view, like the script, it's not great. The characters are not great. Like if I just read the script, I would probably go like, I don't care. But seeing it on the screen, it really got to me. And I think that is to do with the actors and their performances, because I got invested in certain ones. Like this is an ensemble piece of like several people, as you can see. And it worked. So I think this is definitely one that's going to be, what's the word? You either love it or you hate it. And I love it despite it having a lot of problems. But the general gist of it I love. And especially the first half of it I love. So overall, I really enjoyed it. And I feel kind of bad that it reviewed so badly. This one is Sorry to Bother You, which is a release that I think it comes out fairly soon here in regular general release in the cinemas. This is kind of a movie full of social commentary wrapped in a really entertaining, stylish wrapper. Wrapped in a wrapper. Oh my god, that is just so brilliant, isn't it? But yeah, it's just... There's a lot of social commentary. It's really well done. The performances are great. What's his name? Lakeith, the guy from Atlanta. Can't remember his last name now. He's so great. He should just be known as Lakeith. He's phenomenal. He's the lead character. And I'm a sucker for films that have a lot of social commentary, which is why I like Get Out. Which is, funny enough, I didn't like BlacKkKlansman as much. But this is kind of like in the same vein. It takes things to very extreme levels to bring several points across. And it does so. Like, you sometimes feel like someone hit you over the head with a frying pan. It's so obvious of what they're trying to tell you. But I think they put it in such extreme ways to make it more funny. And it's easier to digest really horrendous things, because when you dig deep down, this film is very unsettling and horrendous by what it depicts and what it talks about. But they've done it in such an extreme way that it's laugh out loud funny. I wasn't laughing out loud in this film once. I chuckled several times because it is funny. But every time something is funny, it's also unsettling and disturbing. And I couldn't shed the unsettling and disturbingness of the situation, because I was like, it's not funny. Like, there were people around me laughing their asses off, and I was like, dude, this is not funny because the shit's actually happening, just not in such an extreme way. So it's like, hello, reality check. But it's the same thing as like the lady who was watching A Private War and then in the bathroom was like, I don't need to see these kinds of things. And this film kind of does the same thing. But they wrapped it... It's like they're trying to make you ingest medicine that you don't want to ingest. And they put it in ice cream. They wrap it in something that you like so you can ingest a really bad pill. And that's kind of what the film does tremendously, phenomenally. I love that about it. All the social commentary there. I was so disturbed by the stuff that it depicts. Hey there, 42, how you doing? Talking about Sorry to Bother You, all spoiler free. But yeah, I thought it was really disturbing. and all the depictions there. And obviously, like I said, it goes into really extreme areas. And I was just like, as hilarious as that is and as absurd as it is, it's also ringing true because we're kind of gearing towards that. It's like when you watch Terminator and you kind of know, it's like, well, Skynet, we have the internet now, so this could happen any second. So it's got that realism, but also this surrealism at the same time, which makes the film really entertaining, but disturbing at the same time. And it lives off its performances and off its stylized narrative and cinematography, and it all works and makes a really well-rounded package. I really, really enjoyed that one. So check out Sorry to Bother You. This is Lizzie, which is I think some people could say horror film because it's about the murder of Lizzie's parents. It's Lizzie Borden, who was accused of having murdered her mother and her stepmother and her father. I think 19th century, if I'm not mistaken. And she's played by Chloe Sevigny, and apparently she had a bit of a thing going with the maid, who's played by Kristen Stewart. And the rumor is that together they killed those two people. And did they, didn't they? What led up to it? That's kind of what the story is about. I really enjoyed it. But then I do enjoy seeing the two leads on screen. I like Kristen Stewart, I like Chloe Sevigny. And it's another one of those... 1892, thank you very much. There you go. End of the 19th century is when this Lizzie thing happened. And together they're really captivating because they themselves each, are really captivating. Together they're even more so. And all the actors are really good. I love the performances. Again, it's a period thing, which I'm usually not into. I don't necessarily like period dramas as much, and there were so many at LFF. I was like, Jesus Christ. But I really enjoyed it, and it was interesting to see how the narrative works, because it starts out with the aftermath of the event, and you see some very gruesome things, and then it goes back and tries to basically show you how, like, the lead up to it. And then the actual happening of the event, which is quite gruesome, but also quite intoxicatingly mesmerizing, which is really bad when you think about it. So I really enjoyed it, but I think if you had actors in this that were less engaging, the film would not be as good as it is, because the script goes very by the numbers, because it is basically going this whole biopic thing where it's like, this happened, then. Like, we have to connect all the dots, and that doesn't necessarily make for a very entertaining film. So I think it definitely lives off the performances more so than the actual narrative or script. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and obviously it does tick a tiny bit the LGBT box, so there you go. Arctic was one of the surprising ones. Stars Mads Mikkelsen being stuck in the Arctic, and he's just trying to survive. It's a survival story. Brilliant cinematography, even though most of the stuff you see is white, and yet it works. I was mesmerized by it. Excuse me, his performance was great. He doesn't get to talk much because for most of the film it's just him, and it just works so much. And I was really invested. I mean, I'm a sucker for survival stories. Like, seriously, I love that crap. And this movie is just phenomenal. Because if you know Mads Mikkelsen, he is a really captivating, engaging guy. And I know that I say captivating and engaging a lot, but that's kind of like the common denominator of my favorite films from the film festival, or my favorite films in general. It's like, if I don't find the actors or the characters captivating or engaging or charming or somehow engaging, then the movie will just not work for me. Like, I don't really give a shit how great your special effects are or how amazing this wickedly twisted plot is. If your actors are not up to it, then I'm just not with it. And so for me, all of these favorite films kind of like have the same common denominator. Mads Mikkelsen is great. The cinematography is great. There are twists and turns here that happens, and you're like, oh, now it's going this way, and then it doesn't. So it is quite engaging, even from what is unfolding. And it's just man versus nature, which I find quite interesting and appealing. So yeah, check it out. Definitely a good one. This one is one of, was it 2 or 3 documentaries throughout the film festival that I really like. I think I didn't actually review it because it was embargoed until the 17th of October. Bros After the Screaming Stops is a documentary about the 80s pop band Bros, which was two brothers and another guy who no one ever remembers. I think his name was Craig. He's not really in this documentary. He's in the archive footage that is being used in the documentary. But the documentary is about these two brothers. This is when they were young, in the 80s, when they were singing as Bros. And this is what they look like now. And I'm usually not much into documentaries. I mean, every now and then there's a really, really good one. This one, I literally just walked into the cinema going like, I've got nothing else to do. This thing is on between another movie I want to see and another movie I've just seen. So might as well just watch this one as well. And it turns out it's fucking hilarious. This documentary is, I think, unintentionally hilarious. And I mean hilarious as in laugh out loud funny. It's brilliant. It was so entertaining. And that is all down to majorly this guy. I think that was Matt, that was Luke. Yeah, Matt. Because the stuff this guy spouts in his interviews to camera, his piece to camera, that is being used. I'm not sure if it's like major, like ginormously taken out of context. But it is hilarious. The shit that comes out of this guy's mouth. Put into the I'm not even sure what context you can put it into that it's not abysmally ridiculous, the stuff that this guy says. You have to check this out. I'm pretty sure it's not going to get a general UK release, but if you find this documentary anywhere, if it's on video on demand anywhere, you need to watch it and you can thank me later. Because this shit's amazing. This is like, if you're having a down day, if you're depressed, watch this. You'll feel amazingly better. It is so fucking brilliant. I couldn't believe it. Afterwards, we were all just walking out there, shaking our heads and giggling and laughing to ourselves, going like, what the heck did I just see? It's amazing. This is Crystal Swan, which I think is the official selection for Russia for the international foreign film for the Oscars, and deserved. Well, I say deservedly so. I haven't seen any of the other potential participants or vying for the title, but I've seen this one also by accident, and it totally got me. There's one scene near the end where this is basically a comedy, right? And there's a scene near the end that throws everything topsy-turvy, and I was like, but I got it. And I feel like it was alright. The way that it was resolved wasn't okay with me, but it felt realistic. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but you will know exactly what I mean. One other critic I talked to afterwards, she was like, I hated this film because of that particular twist. And we talked about it afterwards. But yeah, I don't really want to spoil that for you. What this film is about is like this girl, I can't remember the actress's name, but she's phenomenal. She is trying to apply for a visa for the United States, and that's very problematic if you're in Russia, because they're very concerned that if you go to the US, you're not going to come back. And all she wants to do is be a DJ in Chicago, Detroit, whatever, somewhere in America. So she fills out an application form, and she has to kind of fake a bunch of things. And the gist is that she puts on a phone number there that is not her phone number. And she was like, yeah, the phone number is not going to be important because they're not really going to check any references. And then during her interview, it turns out they're actually going to phone this phone number to check references. And she's like, shit. So she phones the phone number herself, finds out where the person actually lives, travels there, and basically ingratiates her into this family because it's a private family home. And just hangs out there for 2 or 3 days for the duration of the window where the embassy might call this number to verify that she is who she says she is. And then obviously she meets strangers, and then all kinds of things happen from there. And it's kind of a bit over the top and unrealistic, and that's why I think the twist at the end happened, because that kind of brings it back with an abrupt stop to reality. I really enjoyed it. Again, all living off the performance of the female lead. She's phenomenal. She's going to be huge. She's absolutely engaging. And I couldn't take my eyes off her because she is just so enigmatic. There's just something going on in her head at all times, and she's just so unapologetically who she is, which is quite something that I'm drawn to anyway. And then just the absurdity of the situation and the ridiculousness and this kind of like assuredness with which she sits in a perfect stranger's living room next to a telephone, because she's like, yeah, don't worry, I'm just going to be here until they stop calling. And I was like, I wouldn't do that. So I was like, what the heck? It's just absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of like situational comical stuff. It's very, very funny, but be aware that there's something very heavy, very dark happening near the end, which might ruin it for you. Maybe you need a trigger warning for that. I'm not entirely sure. It would have been nice to know, but then maybe that would have kind of negated the film. I'm not sure, but it's like I'm in a bit like, I'm not sure where I stand with it, because on the one hand I kind of understand why they put it in there. On the other hand, I feel like you're rubbing people the wrong way with this potentially, and was it really necessary to put this into the film? But that is up to everyone's own, whatever the word is. This is the other documentary that I watched that I was so surprised by. This is the Bill Murray stories, life lessons learned from a mythical man. This is hilarious, but not ridiculously hilarious like the Bros stuff. This is beautiful and funny and life-affirming and spiritual and life-changing, and just one of the most amazing and powerful documentaries I've ever seen that do not have a very powerful subject as their theme. This is literally just about Bill Murray, and Bill Murray being spotted at like all kind of weird places doing all kinds of weird things, and you go like, oh yeah, that's what it is. But the gist that the filmmaker is getting from it, and the message that he's kind of bringing across to the audience is a very lovely one, a very positive one. And it's all about just, you know, it doesn't matter. Just don't overthink too much. Just do things. Just live in the moment. It's kind of like if someone wanted to make a movie about Eckhart Tolle or something. It's like the power of now. You know, it's very, yeah. It's life changing and positive, and I loved it. I left in such a positive, happy, bouncy, lucky mood. I was like, I've just seen something that really turned my day around, and I didn't expect it, which is why it is even more powerful. And the way that they put all this together, first of all, it's entertaining as hell, because I wasn't aware that Bill Murray pops up left, right, and center in the most weird places doing the most random shit, and then just leaves again like it was a gag, like you just got punked or something. I had no idea this was happening. So just seeing that and seeing archival footage that the filmmaker basically put together from all over the internet, like he was interviewing a lot of people about this. And I was not aware of this even happening. So that by itself was already fascinating and entertaining. And then the way he put it together, and some sound bites, because Bill Murray is basically in this film because of other people filming him doing these random things, right? So there's a soundbite here and a soundbite there, and it's like Bill Murray talking to you and telling you, it's like, doesn't matter, don't worry about it, just go with it, you know, live in the moment, don't overthink it. And it reminded me of acting class and Anthony Mindel, and you know, this whole like, fuck it, just do it, you know. And that's kind of what he does. He doesn't overthink it. He's a very unassuming man. And I think that's one of the reasons why people love him so much. And this documentary is great if you're into Bill Murray. If you love the guy, you need to watch it. If you just love really well done documentaries, watch it. If you want to watch, is he interviewed during the film? The filmmaker never actually speaks directly to Bill Murray. He tries to. And that's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to spoil it for you. But it's not like in a negative way or something. It's like the filmmaker kind of has an epiphany And that's all I'm going to say. But you don't need Bill Murray to actually be interviewed in the film, because there's so many sound bites of his in there. You feel like he is a ginormous part of the film. And it was absolutely brilliant. So if you like Bill Murray, I think you need to watch it, just because of you watching him do all these random things that I had no idea Bill Murray ever did or does, or, you know, it's a really well put together package of, it's kind of like an ode to Bill Murray, how awesome he is, what a great actor he is, but more importantly, what a great human being he is, and how he knows what effect he can have on people, and that he loves just taking 5 minutes out of his day, and he knows it's going to make the day, the week, the year, the month, whatever, of this person. And he just takes the 5 minutes because he knows how potentially important this could be to the other person. It's not about him, it's about the other person. And I think we can all learn quite a lot from how Bill Murray goes about living his life. And I didn't even know he did this. And so for me, the documentary had quite a profound impact, because it was like, maybe we should all try to be a bit more Bill Murray, you know. And aside from all of that spiritual crap, as some people might say, the film is just really entertaining. As a film itself, as a documentary, it's just really entertaining. It's a fascinating aspect of a person, whether you knew it about him or not. But it's just really laugh out loud funny in a lot of places, but thoroughly fascinating and entertaining from start to finish. So definitely go and check out Bill Murray stories if you can find it anywhere. I don't think it got a distributor for the UK, which is a shame, because this is absolutely phenomenal, and it's lovely to share it in a cinema and share it with other people. So definitely go and check that out. All right, now on to the general film releases, which I just quickly want to get into. I watched Bad Times at the Royale, which some people are saying is kind of like a new version of Pulp Fiction. It's not as good as Pulp Fiction, but what we have is the El Royale is a hotel that is right on the border, and I mean on the border. The building is literally, half of it is in California, the other half is in Nevada, which makes it quite interesting. And we have a bunch of eclectic characters who are rocking up there at one particular night, and then everything just happens from there. And like I said, I'm not going to spoil anything. We have Dakota Johnson in there, John Hamm's in there, Jeff Bridges is in there. It's really, really great. Who else do we have? We have Jeff Bridges. What's her name? I can't really read this properly. Cynthia Eriot, the girl from, she's also in Widows. Then we have Dakota Johnson, John Hamm. Is it Lee Pullman? Oh my god, yeah, he was fantastic. And the last person I'm not going to say, because it's kind of a bit of a spoiler, and I hate that the trailer has given it away and that the posters give it away, but I'm not going to give it away. Because it is kind of a bit of a... The way the narrative is structured, it's structured like Pulp Fiction, in like episodes that all come together while you're watching the film. And so I really hated the idea that you knew that this person was going to be in this because you've seen him or her on the poster. So that was a bit annoying because it made the film quite predictable. But overall, I thought the film was very entertaining. It's too long because it runs for over 2 hours. And there's a lot of stuff that needs cutting, I think. It becomes quite gruesome, shoot-outy near the end, which is not really a surprise. But there's a lot of like jump scares as well, where something is happening and then the camera does a 180, or there's a jump cut or a smash cut, and then someone gets shot or whatever. But it's a very stylized movie, and I think that there's more style over substance here. I know that a lot of people really like this film, but for me, it was like the heart and soul is missing. It's like it's trying to recreate by numbers, sort of like the narrative structure of Pulp Fiction, but it doesn't really succeed in making very engaging characters, or memorable characters, or a proper, satisfying resolution at the end. There's something at the end that happens where a character or several characters are having like a surprise reveal or something, but you're just waiting for that. And it wasn't the character I thought it was, but I was happily surprised by what happened there. So no one is who he or she seems to be, but the way that the narrative is structured, I think if it was done slightly differently, it would have made for a more powerful impact and better reveals, because after a while you kind of knew what was going to happen, and certain things that happened later were not as surprising as I think they could have been if you kind of hadn't introduced the character like 20 minutes or 30 minutes into the film, only for them to show up like an hour later. It's like it wasn't a surprise that this character showed up, because you were just waiting for this to happen. Because like you introduce a gun in Act 1, you use it in Act 3, right? Them are the rules. So I thought it was a bit too predictable in that to make it interesting. And also the story that is there, there's not really much story there, which is very problematic for something like you find stuff out about each of the characters, just like you do in other films like this, where it's like Identity. Everyone comes together in this motel, and then we don't know who, someone is dead, and we don't know who the killer is, and we're all strangers, and we don't know who we can trust, and we have to find out about each other, and who's lying, who's telling the truth, blah, blah, blah. This sounds interesting, but for whatever reason, Royale just makes it quite, I don't want to say boring, but makes it quite lengthy, makes it quite tedious. It could be a lot more streamlined and faster and more, yeah, more like, and keeping me engaged, keeping me captivated. I don't want to sit there going like, well, that cinematography is really cool because the cinematography is really cool. But otherwise I was like, don't really care about the character. I know this character is not who he or she says. This person is not this, and that person blah and blah and blah. And you know that everyone's going to have a reveal. Some of the reveals are not reveals. Some of them are because they're surprising. Some of them are not surprising. Most of them are very predictable, and you kind of expect certain things to happen. And when they happen, you're like, yep, I knew that was going to happen. And that is just not an entertaining film. When I go through a mental checklist that I've made within the first 20 minutes of the film, and then I'm like, yep, and now this happens, and now this happens, and now this happens. It's too by the numbers for me. And while it is stylish, just like the poster, kind of looks cool. The cinematography looks cool. The sound design is great. Some of the music's good. The performances throughout are decent, but they're not being given a lot to do, which is quite disappointing. So overall, it's a decent film, but I expected better. It's no Pulp Fiction. So I thought it was a bit... And also certain characters that were potentially quite interesting die off really quickly. And you're just like, really? Is that person coming back up? Like, are we going to turn this into a zombie flick to make it more interesting? Nope, we're not. Okay, so that person's gone, that person's gone, that person's gone. Meh. And then the final resolution was a bit meh. So I was like, no. You know, it was all right. I didn't feel like I wasted my time, but I wouldn't recommend for anyone to go and see it. Not sure. Do you need to watch it in the cinema? Probably, because the cinematography is really good. So it does look really good. But the problem is also that it's quite, especially in the second act, it's quite lengthy and tedious to get to the final thing. And then I felt like if I was at home, I could kick back with a cup of tea or coffee or whatever. But then I would probably just put it on pause or maybe not pay attention to it, whatever. So maybe it's better if you watch it in the cinema. But overall, I was a bit disappointed by it. Especially considering the actors that are in it, because I love Jeff Bridges. And I felt like he was horribly underused. And that is due to the script, because it is just so by the numbers. So unfortunately, Bad Times at the El Royale, they weren't that bad, but they weren't good either, unfortunately. And last but not least, and yeah, I'm going to wrap this up real quick. We're not going for 2 hours. Halloween, the new Halloween version, the 2018 Halloween version, where we get Laurie Strode back. Strode back. Jamie Lee Curtis is back, the original Scream Queen. Did I just say Scream Queen? Scream Queen. Cream? No. Scream Queen. I think I say it right, whatever. I love Jamie Lee Curtis. When I saw in the trailer that she's going to be back, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have bothered. I wanted to watch the original Halloween before actually doing this review, but I haven't had a chance to do it yet. I don't remember much about the original Halloween other than the general gist of the plot that happened. And all the iterations in between that and now. I think I only watched Halloween H2O because I think she came back for that one as well, did she? Somehow I remember Jamie Lee Curtis was in this, because why else would I watch it? But yeah, we'll see. I have to check that. Actually, because I have internet, maybe we can check it now. Halloween H2O. There must have been a reason why I watched that in the cinema. Yeah, H2O, 20 years later. Jamie Lee Curtis, Michelle Williams, Josh Hartnett. There we go. I knew there was a reason why I was watching that. That was in 98. That was like 20 years ago. Wow. So basically, Jamie Lee Curtis makes a Halloween movie every 20 years. Good to know. So 20 years for the next one. So I'm not a huge fan of the series, but it's good. It's decent, right? And I like this whole idea of like a little kid going on a murder spree, and you're like, what the fuck's going on? But then other films included some supernatural stuff, and I was like, that's now a bit weird. So basically, he's like, you feel old, yeah, man. I feel old too, seriously. But they included some supernatural stuff where basically you couldn't kill Mike Myers. Like, you ran him over with the car, he'd just get back up. You put it, like, you put him on fire, he's like, whatever. You machete his head off, and he's like, whatevs, people. I don't think the head stuff happened, but you get the gist, right? He's basically unkillable. And I have a problem with that, because that's kind of like aliens coming to town and witches and whatever. The supernatural stuff, I don't necessarily need that, because I was like, well, this is just a really horrendously devious kid who just started murdering people because it felt like it. And, you know, some people just do, you know, serial killers come from somewhere. Serial killers were kids once. So I like that they didn't kind of do that, even though in this film there are certain things that happen to Michael Myers and you're like, you should be dead now, man. What the fuck is going on? Like I said, I'm not spoiling it. But overall, this film, just like the original, which I haven't seen in about 20 years, quite slow. It's like this proper 70s, 80s horror, slow pace kind of thing that I think doesn't work nowadays anymore, because we're so used to fast paced shit. And maybe I do have ADHD, but it's just, I need stuff to happen quickly. I'm not a very patient person, so I'm just like sitting there going like, can we just get to it now? Something's not right. I need to be engaged in some way, shape or form. And in the original one, it took quite a while until we get to what's going on. And here, it also takes quite a while until we get to where it's going, where stuff is going on. But you're kind of intrigued by these scientists / reporters, whatever they are, who you've seen in the trailer, who rock up at Michael's institution and show him the mask. And then, you know, there's this bus ride and something goes wrong and everyone's just like getting out of the bus and you're like, it doesn't really look like much of an accident. What's going on here? And then he's right next to his hometown and he goes on this other killing spree. And once he goes on this killing spree, one of the things that I always liked about the Michael Myers thing, and what I like about villains in horror movies in general, is they don't chase you. Like, they come after you, but they're never in a hurry, because they're like, well, I'm not going to break out into sweat to get you. I'll get you eventually. And if I can't get you, then I'll just deviate over here into this house and murder this person behind the fucking curtain. Because that's just the kind of person I am. And I love this, that he never runs. He just always walks. And he's like the opposite of me. He's just so fucking patient. He will just wait in a fucking cupboard until you come and open the door. And then he will just stab you in the face. And you're like, okay. That kind of a thing. So he's just this really patient, silent, deadly, persistent killer that will never stop unless you stop him. And it's like, how do you stop him? If you run him over with a car and nothing happens, you know, if you set him on fire and nothing happens, like, how do you stop him? And that's kind of what this film does. And then obviously we have Laurie Strode, who's now yet another 20 years older, and they've changed quite a bit of the stuff around. So H2O basically didn't happen, and I can't even remember what happened there. But it's kind of like nothing between the original Halloween and this Halloween happened. They rewrote certain things, and whether you like that or not, I don't need them to adhere to every other shit that they come up with in other films and other scripts. But considering you bring the character of Laurie back in H2O and you bring her back here, maybe you should have at least adhered to H2O. So we'll see. But overall, I thought the film was quite a decent horror film. I like Mike Myers because he's just, all of a sudden he's in the background and you're like, shit, someone's gonna die. And he's just really good like that. And he's this silent killer. He's not rushing at you and screaming at you and stabbing you like a crazy person. He is, for whatever reason, he's like a precision killer, even though he killed when he was a little kid. And apparently then he was incarcerated for 40 years and now he's left out again. And that, it feels weird because he was incarcerated when he was a little kid, right? So he's been in prison all his life. So what kind of upbringing do you have? What kind of education do you have? What kind of mental state are you in? That would have been really interesting. So I was kind of siding with the reporters who were like, I want to know what makes Michael Myers tick, and here's the mask, and blah, blah, blah. And then obviously, as you can expect, they don't live very long. So that's not a spoiler because that is so obvious. But overall, I really enjoyed the film. But I wish that they had done a bit more with this film than kind of make like an adult Mike Myers reiteration of the first Halloween, which I thought was a bit like, why, you know? So when I say adult, I mean like the pensioner version, because he's like, how old must he be now? I have no idea, but he looked quite, I like the idea that they shied away from showing the actor up close and in focus without the mask. Like you see the actor, like he's an old man with white hair and a white beard, but everything is kind of like blurry, and he's kind of like behind things, and you can't properly make out his face, which I really like. Wink, wink. And I really enjoyed that. And I was like, just show me his face. But then I was like, no, don't show me his face, because I just like to keep guessing, like, what does he actually look like? And then one of the things I didn't like about this film was the final showdown between Mike Myers and Laurie. I expected this to be really epic, and it wasn't. Like, certain things that happened there was like really cool, but overall I thought it would be more. Like, I expected it to be phenomenally amazeballs, and it wasn't. It was just your standard thing. And so I was like, it's not bad, but it's not great either. And I felt a bit like they could have given Jamie Lee Curtis more to do and made her a bit more badass. So I felt it was a bit a lackluster attempt at making her Ellen Ripley. Like, I wanted her to be Ellen Ripley. Like, judging from the trailer, she was like, yeah, I'm ready for you. I just want you to come out. And then, like, I'm going to shoot at you. I can't do this properly with my left hand. I'm right-handed. So I thought she's going to do Linda Hamilton, Ellen Ripley, you know, go crazy on his ass. And that doesn't really happen. It was quite tame what she ended up doing. And I'm not going to give away how the film actually ends. But everything is kind of like building up towards the showdown. And then the showdown was a bit lackluster. So I was a bit disappointed. What did not help, and I'm sorry, I'm going on almost 2 hours. I said I was going to be below 2 hours. I'm going to manage to do it. Oh my God. I had a horrendous experience at Cineworld Cinemas watching this movie, because about 20 minutes into the film, the sound became muffled. Literally, like, people were talking like this. Like, people were talking like this. You couldn't understand the dialogue at all. It was really bad. It was like people were underwater. That's what it sounded like. And there was a scene with a man and his son in a car, And everyone in the cinema thought that this was a stylistic choice at first, because Michael Myers is going on a killing spree. But then when it cuts to the next scene and the sound was still fucked, someone from the audience ran outside to tell Cineworld staff what was going on. Within a few minutes, the sound was restored and we were like, okay, cool. However, that shit happened another 8 times. I shit you not. 9 times in total, that for several minutes on end, and I mean 5 minutes and longer each single time this happened, where the sound was muffled as people were underwater. Sometimes they were trying to fix it so there was no sound at all. It was absolutely horrendous. I wish that I had watched the subtitled version, but then thank God it's a horror movie, so hopefully the dialogue is not that important. But I was like, what the fucking heck is going on? Every single time this happened, several people went outside to report it. Several people never came back because they're like, fuck this shit. I just paid for this. What the heck? The end result was the people that complained got a free ticket. But I was like, you just wasted 2 hours of my time. Because I had already put like an hour into this film. Because the first time this happens, and then after a few minutes you fix it, you're like, okay, there was whatever the problem was and they fixed it. And then it kept happening, and kept happening, and kept happening, and kept happening. And everyone was kind of like, that would seriously take you out of the movie. Just a tiny bit. Ever so slightly. Just a smidge. And then everyone was laughing every single time it was happening. And like I said, it was happening for like 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time. It made the movie unwatchable. And thank God most of the time the dialogue wasn't important, because Mike Myers is running through the scene just trying to kill a bunch of people. So it's like, it made it kind of funny. But then I think most horror films are kind of funny anyway. But all we got afterwards, like I said, it's like if this happened like 2 or 3 times throughout the film, I could have potentially forgiven that. Like if it happens once through the film, something happens, shit happens, you fix it, you get on with it. But if this happens 9 times in a 2-hour movie for 5 to 10 minutes each time, how you cannot afterwards go into the cinema and make a speech about how fucking sorry you are for this abysmal performance. Like, I went to the film festival, obviously. I watched over 50 films in the last 4 weeks. And not a single one of them had any issues. There were no audio issues. There were no video issues. There were no issues with... Oh, there was an issue with the seat because someone spilled coffee and someone immediately came in, fixed it, and put a pillow on top so someone else could use it. That is customer service. Cineworld, 9 times the sound was fucked during Halloween, during a 2-hour movie. You guys couldn't fix it. No one came in and was like, we're so sorry about this. No one said anything. People had to seek out staff and go like, well, are we going to get money back? Are we going to get free tickets? What are we getting? It's like, blah. No one actually approached anyone saying, we're so sorry for this. We had a malfunction in the projector room, whatever it was. I asked the guy afterwards what was wrong. I was like, we're not entirely sure. I was like, that's very helpful. It's like, yeah, but we fixed it. It's like, how can you fix it if you're not entirely sure what the fuck the problem was? And he was like, well, don't worry, man, but we fixed it. I was like, this usual bullshit customer service thing. And he was like, here's a free ticket. And I was like, dude, I'm an unlimited member. I don't need a fucking free ticket because I get all the free tickets I want. So you get like a food voucher, which is like, what, £4? And I was like, that's just, they don't care. It's shoddy customer service. And like I said, it's like, there's no, obviously things can go wrong because this happens. When I lived in Germany, we went to the cinema and one of the parts in the projector burned through. So they couldn't show the movie. But they came into the cinema and they were like, I'm sorry, this is what happened. We cannot show the movie. We're not entirely sure how long it takes to fix it. I can give you a free ticket so you can come back some other time. Or you can wait here. We will give you free popcorn and we will let you know once it's fixed. The entire thing was fixed within half an hour. and they then screened the movie. This is how you do it. You walk in there, you tell people what the situation is, you give them options, and you apologize. I have been to Cineworld cinemas for quite a while, and this year has been horrendously abysmal. I've had at least 5 issues this year in Cineworld cinemas. And I know this might not sound like much, especially considering I go to the cinema pretty much once a week. But one of the things that I've noticed is that they do not train their customer service guys. They never apologize unless you call them out on it. So afterwards I have to go like, I'm sorry, can I talk to your manager? And then I have to wait around for 5 minutes until the manager shows. And I'm like, hi there, Mr. Manager. I was just in screen so-and-so, movie so-and-so. This is what happened. Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, because it just happened. And communication in your company is not really good. And no one really bothers about fixing things. And the bad thing is that I have to step out of the film for 5 minutes to try and find someone who I can complain to, or let me word it nicer, who I can advise of the issues that are currently happening in whatever screen I'm watching this in. Then I need to wait another 5 to 10 minutes for someone to actually fucking fix the problem. Meanwhile, I've missed 15 minutes of film that I basically paid for, even though I'm an unlimited member. But why is that customer service? And all you get is, when you ask for it, they don't give it to you. You have to ask for this. A free ticket or some free food, whatever, as a little like, oh, we're so sorry. You don't do this by having customers ask for it. You stand at the fucking door of this cinema that just had an abysmal screening, and you make sure that every person coming out of there gets a voucher and an apology. That is how you do customer service. And I work in customer service. The customer is always right kind of a thing. And this is just common decency. But you clearly don't give a shit, because you know that you have so many unlimited members who pay you shitloads of money every month, no matter how much stuff that they watch, no matter how abysmal it is, whether the 3D is working or not, whether the sound is working or not, whether one of your speakers is fucked and you tell them about it and no one does anything about it or not, or if something's wrong with the video because it's blurry or not. All of these things I have experienced just this year in Cineworld cinemas. And every single time, none of the people working there approached the people in the cinema to apologize for it. Not a single time. And that is absolutely shoddy. I complained to Cineworld on Twitter. All they did afterwards were like, we were investigating. And then the final result was, they were giving away vouchers. Can you please confirm you got a voucher? Oh, you got a voucher. That makes up for everything. It does not. It absolutely does not. All the shit doesn't have to go wrong in your cinema. Like I said, I was in, funny enough, Cineworld Leicester Square in the IMAX screen, Picture House, in the BFI in the last 4 weeks. Not a single issue watching over 50 films. I go back to Cineworld and everything is fucked. I'm not impressed. I guess you've got the cheapest unlimited deal for a reason. So, thanks very much for the food voucher. Halloween was alright. Not that great. Bad Times at the Royale were as bad as I thought they might be. But they weren't as good as I thought they might be either. Alright, just a quick rundown of new releases DVD-wise. So, new next week is Sicario 2 Soldado. It's coming out on the 29th. We also have Mandy coming out, which was also screening at the London Film Festival. If you want to know what I thought of that, you can find that, I think, last week. We also have The First Purge coming out, and Whitney, which is the documentary about Whitney Houston, which I still haven't seen, so I'm going to definitely check that out. In previous weeks during the film festival, I didn't actually include this. Ocean's 8 came out, and The Breadwinner, so do check that one out if you're so inclined. For London Film Festival, 22nd of July, the Paul Greengrass version is on Netflix now, as is Apostle, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm hearing really good things. Girl on the Train is on Netflix, as is Malevolent, which stars Florence Pugh, so you need to check it out just for that, because I don't know anything about Malevolent other than Florence Pugh stars in it, and that's enough for me. Nocturnal Animals is in there from 2016, which is a great film. Very disturbing, so you have been warned. And Stronger, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, which is about the Boston Marathon bombing. Heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching film. You will cry, but it's a brilliant performance by Jake Gyllenhaal. Really, really like that one. So that's new on Netflix. You know what's new on DVD and Blu-ray. And yep, sorry, we're going on the 2 hours again. I just can't stop talking about movies. Seriously trying. Next week, no London Film Festival. I swear, I promise you. So check out certain films in the cinema. The First Man is out. Just First Man is out. I haven't seen that yet. Bohemian Rhapsody is out now as well. The Hate You Give is out. Venom is still out. I haven't seen that. I'm not sure if I really want to. Fahrenheit. I missed it in cinemas. I missed it at LFF, and now I missed it in cinemas because Cineworld's only showing it for 1 week. And today was the last day. The screening is now over because it started at 8, just like I did. So that's a bit annoying. But I hope you have great fun at the cinema this weekend. I'm going to be at MCM Comic Con this weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the XL here in London. So if you're into that kind of thing, come over there, say hi. I'm probably going to run around on the show floor, try to get some B-roll and interview a bunch of people. But yeah, follow me on Instagram at Melanie Ratloff, all one word. Or on Twitter, Melanie_Ratloff. Or just find me with ILoveCinema vlog, all one word, on Twitter. And all the linkages are on there to find my private Twitter and my Instagram and all the things. On ILoveCinema vlog on Twitter, you can also see previous shows that I've uploaded to YouTube. I've included, especially for London Film Festival, I included an overview because all of these shows, the last 3 shows, I think were 2 hours long each, which is too long for anyone to watch in one go. So I've put the films in there that I'm talking about, as well as the time codes, and I should have probably mentioned that at the start of the show. So yeah, check that out. Just go #ILoveCinema on YouTube and you will be able to find it, and my voice is going now. So I will bid you good night, and I hope you have a good time at the cinema. Bye.